So
Hi, my name is Rochelle, and you're listening to Box F1 Pod. Welcome to the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix, which is what we're calling this now because it's no longer the Spanish Grand Prix. That name has been given to the Madrid race that we're having later this year. And I think at the end of last episode, I said this race is going to be the new one. It's not. I was wrong. This is the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix, which we've had forever, and then the race in Madrid will be later this year. And what a race we had today in Barcelona. Lewis had his first race win with Ferrari and his first win since Silverstone 2024, I think. It's basically been 2 years. It's been 2 years since he's won a race and celebrated on the podium. I think he won a race later that year in Spa, but it was awarded after the ceremony, so he didn't properly get to celebrate on the podium as first place. So really, this was a really, really big moment of silence for the last Ferrari winner, Carlos Sainz, RIP. But what an incredible day for Lewis. It was a joy to watch. It's been a long time coming, and I can't wait to discuss all of it. But first, it's time for the digital warm-up. Lap 1. All right. So, lap 1. As a quick reminder, last week in Monaco, there were 8,000 penalties handed out, half of which were for the same thing, which was speeding in the pit lane. And after the fourth one, everyone was like, this is suspicious. What's going on? After the race, as the race ended, Pierre had accumulated 2 penalties for this, and since he didn't serve either of them, I guess his team I don't know what his team thought, but they also didn't tell him that he had gotten these. So he started celebrating P3 as he crossed the finish line. It seems like nope. Nope, you've lost. So they removed 10 seconds from his finishing time, which took away third place from him. Alpine appealed this decision, which the FIA said they would review on Thursday of this week. So 4 days ago. Basically, it was media day in Barcelona, and they decided that they would rescind both penalties from Pierre, which reinstated him back to third. And that ended up pushing Isaac to fourth and Oscar down to fifth. Now, first, I would like to say that I'm very happy for Pierre. Seeing him, he was heartbroken, seeing him well up, trying to hold back tears during his interview last week was heartbreaking to watch, and seeing him so happy to get this third place back was heartwarming. It was lovely to watch. I'm very happy for him. However, Pierre's happiness aside, I'm extremely confused why this happened, how this happened, and just generally what the fuck. Because half of the grid got the same penalties. So because they didn't appeal the decision, it doesn't get rescinded. But it's the same decision for all of them. There was clearly something wrong with the whatever tracks the speed in the machine that tracks the speed in the pit lane. Clearly that was broken because they couldn't have all been speeding, first of all. Second of all, the other argument I've heard is that Pierre didn't serve his penalties during the race and therefore had the opportunity to appeal these penalties after the race. But since the other drivers did serve them, they couldn't appeal. But that seems stupid too. Just add the 5 seconds back. I also hate, I think I talked about it last week, I hate when they apply decisions after the race. But fine. It happens the same day of the race. Whatever. A week later, it literally had 4 days had passed since the race ended. That seems stupid to me and kind of insane. Because even the same day decisions, I don't really like, just because you watch someone live out their dream on the podium, celebrate, be happy, and then just gets taken away from them. Plus, Pierre missed out on being able to celebrate this third place on the podium, which I know is not the same as like having a third place and having the points, but like it's a huge part of it. And it's also just like deeply unfair to Isaac. Like you have this whole like celebration, like he in his like second year in Formula One, driving for Red Bull, got third in Monaco. That's like every driver's dream. And I know Pierre's never been able to achieve that, and this is a big dream for him too, but like this is again nothing against the teams or the drivers. This is purely against the FIA because I feel like you didn't need 5 days to come to this conclusion. And if you did, then you should apply to all the penalties that you issued. Because if Pierre's get rescinded, then the rest of them should get rescinded. And all of the drivers, like I think Oscar got pushed down to 5th, Isaac to 4th. I think I said that already, but like Oscar was really like he didn't hold back. Like he really went to town, being like, "What's a week? If we don't serve a penalty, we can get it taken like rescinded." Like that doesn't make any sense, and it's not fair to everyone else. And yeah, anyway, I'm really torn about because I am happy for Pierre. I want to see him happy. I think he's definitely deserved that podium. But the FIA should have made that decision then and there, not 5 days later, and not like only for him. The same decision should have applied to every driver. So that's where I stand on that. And I know some of the other teams are planning to appeal that have been impacted by it. I doubt they'll be successful. I don't think they think they'll be successful, but like you gotta at least try. It's just like not fair. But anyway, moving on to I've sort of combined these two. Lap 2, off-track F1 / trackside of Barcelona, because there's not as many things. Carlos did an interview while eating pizza. I'm not really sure who he was being interviewed by. It was some British YouTube show. But he was asked who he thinks is the most competitive of all the drivers, and he says Charles. And like brought it back to their chess playing days, and basically said I now have an app on my phone playing chess all the time because of my time with Charles, which was cute. And then he was asked who of the drivers secretly loved the attention the most, and he said all of them. But then he said, I can tell you who cares the least. And then he said, it's Alex who cares the least about the fame and the fortune. I am a little surprised he didn't mention Max as well, but I guess he's really focusing on his teammates, clearly. And maybe Max doesn't care about the fame, maybe he cares about the fortune part. I don't know. But he did say Alex doesn't give a lick about the rest of it. He just is there to drive. And like the way he describes his teammates is just so nice. And like he clearly respects them so much. And this is why Carlos is one of my favorite people on the grid. Love him. Oh my god, there was also a really funny moment where I don't know what it was from the podcast that he does with Alex for Williams, and I can't remember, I don't know what brought it on, but I guess they were talking about his L'Oreal ads that he makes, and Carlos started mocking himself, and he was like, all right, get ready with me for the Cannes Film Festival. First we're gonna start with blah blah, blah. He like did a full like fake get ready with me. It was really funny. All right, now the biggest, well, I'm gonna start with the rest of it. Charles accidentally wore Lewis's kit. The number 44 was on the side. It was kind of funny. That was only on Thursday. Also, obviously, a big topic this whole week has been the World Cup. Carlos rocked up in his Spanish team kit with the number 55 on it. Kimi does not want to talk about the World Cup. He was asked about it during the press conference, and then Mercedes did a video where they went around their paddock and they're around their hospitality and we're like, who are you rooting for in the World Cup? And everyone, well, George was like, who am I rooting for? Tanzania. Obviously, I'm rooting for England. And then it just went throughout the whole team, and everyone gave like just a country or like 3 words, like why they were rooting for one country versus the other. And in between, like clipped in between all of these answers, was Kimi giving the longest freaking answer to this question. He was like, I don't want to talk about Italy. And then he mentioned every footballer he likes. And like it was like such a long-winded answer, and it was so funny. And he never answered the question. um all right. Now moving on to the biggest story of this week, the towel. So, because Kim Kardashian can literally not breathe without everyone flying off the handle, every moment of her time at the Monaco Grand Prix has been dissected and criticized and gone viral. The two main ones, well, there were three, I think. The outfit she wore for qualifying, people did not like. How she handled the grid walk with Brundle, where he tried to talk to her and she ignored him. Everyone fails to acknowledge the fact that half of the celebrities ignored him, and this was one of Brundle's worst grid walks, which is a rough thing to say considering they're all not great. But Cynthia Riva's like, I'm not talking. Mbappe full on cold stared him and refused to say a single word. And Kim didn't reply. But people are, of course, mostly focusing on Kim Kardashian, ignoring Martin Brundle on the grid walk. I saw other clips of her on the grid and people trying to talk to her and her like literally saying, I cannot hear. I really think she could not hear anything. A. B, I think she was deeply overwhelmed. And I'm sure we'll see in the next season of the Kardashians. But like, I feel like this whole thing was very overwhelming for her, even though I think her family has at least attended Grand Prix before. I can't remember if she has. I assume she has in like years ago. But like, she's now there in a specific context, like as a WAG. I'm sure that's very stressful for her. She definitely had anxiety about it. She like the whole time looked kind of like deer in headlights, like terrified. And like even like she just looked nervous to be there in this capacity, which I think is really cute. But like I just don't think she was clocking people speaking to her. I think she was just trying to like get through the walk. And finally, I'm going to blame Lewis for this because I think he should have prepared her for the fact that ignoring Brundle on the grid walk is a no. And if a middle-aged, bald British man shoves a microphone in your face while you're walking through the grid, you respond. I've had people be like, well, she should have done her own research. Maybe she did. Maybe he did warn her and she just forgot everything and like couldn't hear and like was just overwhelmed. She's overarchingly a nice person. Like by all accounts, she's polite and nice, and like I genuinely think she was just overwhelmed in the situation. But regardless, I really got off track there. Sorry. I'm a big Kim defender. Sorry to anyone that offends listening. But the final incident that caused a huge ruckus online was in Park Firm. They have, the little stands for each of the drivers, like a bottle and a towel, and where they can put their helmets. And then after that, they go to the cool down room. Kimmy had, I'm like 95% sure this was after they had been in Park Firm, done their interviews, and then gone to the cool down room. Kimmy had left his towel on his little stand, and Kim was walking by to wait for them to come up onto the podium. And I guess she was really hot, and she picked up Kimmy's towel and like wiped her face. Oh my God, the ruckus this caused. All over the place. Kim Kardashian stole Kimi Antonelli's towel. Kim Kardashian steals F1 winner's towel. Kim Kardashian has no respect for the space around her. She's so entitled. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my God. She like looked around. I'm pretty sure she asked one. Even if she didn't, he left his towel there. Anyway, also would like to point out that when she was under the podium, Kimmy directly poured champagne on top of her. So that's also disrespectful. Kimi Antonelli, don't pour champagne on Kim Kardashian. I'm kidding, but anyway, 4 days this has been like a news story, and then Mercedes posted a video of like they like approaching Kimmy, and they're like, Kimmy, where's your towel? And he's like, I don't know, have you seen my towel? And then they go to George and they're like, have you seen Kimmy's towel? And he's like, no, I haven't seen Kimmy's towel. Where could it be? And then it clips to Kimmy washing his hands. And he goes, oh no, where's my towel? And they hand him a towel. He's like, this is not my towel. Where's my towel? And he's like, you could tell he's like bursting at the seams, and he thinks this whole thing is funny. Like, he wasn't offended by it. He didn't think it was crazy. I just think he thinks it's funny that everyone has made a big deal about Kim Kardashian stealing his towel. And he was also asked about it at the press conference, and they're like, Kimmy, have you found your towel yet? And he's like, no, I'm still looking for my towel. And he looks literally like he's about to cry with laughter. And then after, I think it was one of the practice sessions, he gets handed a towel with a pink bow on it, and he unwraps it, and it says, to Kimmy from Kim. And he like opens it, and he like, his eyes are like wide and his mouth's like, he's like, is this really from her? And they're like, yep, that's really from her. And he goes, thank you, Kim. And then he like puts it around his neck and wore it the rest of the day. It was like, if there's one thing Kim Kardashian is great at, it's managing like PR crises. She will turn something negative against her, and there's a lot of it, into something funny. She's so good at that. She has a great sense of humor. Anyway, I love that she did that. I love that Kimmy accepted it, and it was just a great, like, great end conclusion to this saga. But my favorite comment on this whole thing was someone commenting Skimmy's campaign incoming, and I thought that was hilarious. And God, I did think at one point I was like, she's gonna use Alex Leclerc in one of her Skims campaigns, but God, I would love for her to do a Skimmy's with Kimi Antonelli campaign. Lewis will probably be featured eventually. I don't know. I just think focusing on Kimmy with this towel thing is so funny. And I hope I'm assuming there's gonna be like an F1 situation happening soon, but Kim will never miss an opportunity to make $1, and I love that about her. All right. Well, that concludes the digital warm-up. On to analysis. Okay, on to analysis. So first we're going to start with quali. The biggest thing that happened during quali was Charles ended up crashing out. And his interview after was, as usual, so sad. He just said he felt ashamed for crashing and for being there after doing that. And said it must be tough to stick with him as a fan, which is so sad. This crash in particular, I think, was his fault. He's still struggling with his brakes, but like this could have been avoided. I think it's becoming a trend now, him crashing in corners. And I think it's partly him trying too hard to make the car do something it cannot do, and also just his car not being in the same condition that Lewis's is. And I also feel like there's always going to be a pressure when your teammate is doing well and you just can't make your car perform, and I think he's probably struggling a little bit with that, especially after last year when he was just monumentally better than Lewis, and that trend sort of just not continuing this year. So all of that must just be like very confusing for Charles and difficult to deal with. He probably should stop crashing in corners, but yeah, he's still a sad boy. I still love him, and you won't hear me going too hard on Charles. Sorry. All right, so the starting grid is as follows: George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Kimi, Lando, Max, Isaac, Oscar, Liam, Nico Hulkenberg, Charles, Arvin Lindblad, Gabby Bortoleto, Franco Colapinto, Pierre Gasly, Ollie, Carlos Sainz, Esteban Ocon, Alex Albon, Checo, Bottas, Stroll, and Fernando, who will be starting from the pit lane due to modifications made during park firm conditions and extra power unit elements being used. So now moving on to the race. Before we dive into what happened throughout the race, I do want to talk quickly about tire and pit stop strategy. It was made pretty clear that this would be the first race so far this year that isn't a one-stop strategy, which as usual indicates that there will be some level of excitement throughout the race, because the more stops there are, the more things can go wrong. And from what I understand, Pirelli also brought tires that were slightly softer compounds overall, which means that with the heat and the softer compound, tire maintenance to avoid degradation and strategy for pitting becomes like paramount here. And we saw that play a huge part throughout the race. So starting with, let's start at the very beginning. The start. Okay, so excellent start from George. I think we're all waiting with bated breath. For some reason, we're all just waiting for George to fuck up. He did not fuck up. He did a great start. Isaac had issues, so he qualified 6th and then dropped down, I think, many places. I think he was down to like 12th or 13th. But it took just a few laps for him to fight his way back up to 8th. And he gave us some exceptional overtakes, and all of them were like very unique in places that just like obscure spots along the grid where people just don't overtake normally. And he made these like wonky overtakes happen. And like overall, we just got some excellent driving today. Okay, so now let's talk about George. So a big part of this weekend was all about whether George could measure up to his teammate. For some reason, this was the weekend where like he has to prove it this weekend or the. And he had a series of bad races after he won in Australia, and since then he's just not been able to keep up with Kimi for a variety of reasons. And I do think it's important here to note here that a lot of this is bad luck for George, but also exceptional skill on Kimi's part versus like huge mistakes from George or like Kimi getting lucky. Do you know what I mean? And this weekend actually was a really, really good weekend for George to help make up for some of his bad moments over the last few weeks. Overall, stellar weekend for him. He secured pole in quali and kicked off the race with a great start. And he did maintain the lead for a lot of this race. It's also important to note that Kimi only managed to get ahead of George by like lap 62. We'll talk about how that went in a second, but I do want to point that out. George just generally had a pretty good weekend, and yet I don't think anyone is leaving Barcelona being like, wow, he's really going to give Kimi a run for his money. It's just like, meh, he's still fine, which I think is just really sad for George. As much as he's like, he's been a little irksome in the past. I just feel like this is really sad and unfair for him based on his timeline with Mercedes and the quality of a driver that he is. But let's quickly switch gears to Kimi, who, on the other hand, had a really, really good race. Not just like a good race. He drove really well today. He started 3rd and spent most of the race chasing down George quite impressively, I might add, even though it took him up until lap 62 to overtake George. Like, he was driving really well this whole race. The one downside is he did have multiple warnings for track limits throughout the race, to the point where McLaren was telling Lando, like, you should stick closely to him to close that gap, because he will be getting they would kept speaking like it was a fact, like he will be getting a penalty for exceeding track limits, so that Lando could easily inherit that position. However, like, in the beginning, yes, like he got some warnings about it, but in the second half, he was just like towing the line of track limits. But like he didn't seem to ever cross it, which was, first of all, like a really impressive demonstration of like car control, to be able to be like just on the line without crossing it ever, to the point where McLaren was like, oh, he screwed up, but like he didn't ever actually screw up. That's how close he was. That's how much control he had of his car. It did remind me a little bit of Max and how he would always drive like just on the limit. I think Kimi's exhibiting some similar styles, but that's just me. I don't know. That's what's actually happening. Anyways, around lap 62, Kimi finally overtakes George into P2. It did kind of seem like George either made a mistake or like didn't try that hard to maintain grid track position. But regardless, Kimi's overtake was like excellent. After his overtake, we did all notice that his front wing was slightly hanging off, which either means he had contact at some point or the wing just like fell off on its own. Unclear on what happened with the wing, and honestly, I don't know. There was no time to figure it out, because after that, Kimi's car just stopped on track. Literally just stopped. It was the weirdest thing. And then Mercedes like, oh yeah, his car just like turned off. Okay, how the hell does that happen? This was Kimi's first like major reliability issue this year, but it definitely wasn't the first Mercedes reliability issue this year, which just really I think puts into question the quality of their engine. Like, I don't think they have the best engine on the grid. So I guess that also means that Kimi's performance goes beyond the quality of the car that they made for this year, which is very impressive, but it is a little confusing because all of their partner teams that use their engines have also had reliability issues. I forget his name, but the former Red Bull mechanic who's now part of the F1 team said that we can't always like the performance of sister teams. So like for example, Williams reliability issues or McLaren reliability issues are not necessarily due to the Mercedes engine because every team installs it in their own way. So you could have reliability issues with the power unit in one team, but not necessarily in another team that uses the same like core engine. But he was also like, at this point, there's something wrong with the engine. Like after all of these things, like there's been some major like issues where we should probably start questioning the quality of the engine. And then literally at the same damn time, Charles has a hydraulic issue causing him to go onto the gravel, and then he had to retire from the race. Before the race ended, literally the same lap. It was a rough weekend for Charles. Especially after he also crashed in quali. Again, like we said, like it's been a combination of some silly mistakes, reliability issues, and just like bad luck. And also it just seems like much starker in comparison with Lewis's continued success, which cannot be great for Charles's like race mentality. And I really hope he can separate the two and like rally and start performing a bit better because he's better than this. We all know he's better than this, and he has enough things working against him. He can put the silly mistakes to the side. All right, finally, let's talk about Lewis, who drove exceptionally this whole race, avoided any major drama. There was like nothing like really, I think, noteworthy about his performance other than it was just like really good driving overall. The virtual safety car that was issued after Fernando's DNF did give, which was actually really sad because Fernando did imply this would be his last Barcelona Grand Prix. RIP. Although I also saw a rumor today that he might be going back to Alpine, which I think is wild. Like, go home. You have a newborn. But anyway, but I don't want him to go out on such a like a low. Like, I want him to have at least a quality season. You know, like obviously he's not gonna win a championship, but like a quality season before he pisses off. Like, either apparently there's rumors that Aston Martin is really gonna like step it up at Spa. Whatever the case may be, I just need him to have some good races before he retires officially. But I don't know if we're gonna get that opportunity. Anyway, the virtual safety car that was issued after Fernando's DNF, Lewis pitted. Pit? Lewis pit? Or pitted? Lewis went to the pit. Lewis did a stop. Whatever the past tense is, Lewis did a stop, and he shaved like maybe a few seconds off from what he would have from the time the pit stop would have taken during the race. So because he managed to squeeze it in during a virtual safety car, he was given a couple of seconds advantage. And that's when he officially went into the lead. But I honestly I think he was going to win regardless. And I did actively lol at one point when he took the lead after the virtual safety car, and one of the commentators said, I can hear the jet firing up in LA and Kim getting ready to fly into his arms. Dead. Also, they're all so nervous to say Kim's name. Like, they tiptoed around it for weeks. And now whenever someone says it, you can hear like this little pause right before like they're like about to say like something crazy. Like, I can hear him. Kim's jets in LA. It's quite funny. But yeah, I think this was Lewis's day and he owned it. regardless of that virtual safety car or not. There was a moment during the race when his engineer, who by the way is a new addition, I guess due to Lewis literally begging to have anyone besides his previous guy. Lewis has now called him his Italian Bono, which I love. But I saw him like physically for the first time today when he went up on the podium, and I just lolled because he literally is just like this slightly elderly man with like a mustache and like thick glasses, and he just kind of looks like Giuseppe from Pinocchio. Or like a cartoon Italian man, and I just adore him. He just like looks so geeky, and like he looks geeky Italian and like elderly, and I just love that he has such a like good relationship with Lewis. There was one point during the race when he got on the radio and he was like, I have a suggestion, and Lewis was like, I'm fine where I am, thanks. But anyway, loved seeing them together. I love that they have a good relationship, and I love that Lewis has finally found a groove with his racing engineer, because that's like such an important part of your success in F1 is like vibing with your race engineer and having a solid relationship. That's another thing that when GP leaves next year, Max getting a new engineer, like they've developed such a strong relationship together that it's almost like it's nervy for him to have to build that sort of like trust and bond with another person. But we'll see how that goes. Maybe he won't be here anymore. Highly doubt that, honestly. He keeps saying it, but like I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think he wants to leave a season on this. I don't think he wants to leave the sport after a season like this. Anyway, so there were 7/8 total DNFs. There was Charles, Kimi, Ollie, Fernando, Nico, Bottas, and Stroll. And then I'm gonna be honest, I'm really confused. I don't know if it says Alex did not complete the race, but he did complete the race. So I don't think he didn't officially DNF, but he's an NC. So I don't know what that means. If someone does know what that means, please let me know. I'm sure I'll figure it out eventually when they like release more in-depth descriptions of what that means. But like he's listed as an NC, but I don't understand what that means. Have they posted yet? It just wasn't our weekend. Okay, well that didn't help. It's not classified. Anyway, all right, so post race, I want to say that there was something like poetic about the fact that Djokovic. Oh my god, why does it sound so wrong when I say it? Djokovic. That's right. There was something poetic about Djokovic. Oh my god, waving the checkered flag for Lewis. Them both being like elderly athletes who excel in their respective fields. I apologize for calling a like 39 and 41-year-old elderly, but like you know what I mean. They're like old for their sport. They're old for athletes in general. They're old for their individual sports, and I just like, but they're both like still top of the class, top of the field. So there was just like something nice about Djokovic waving the flag. A couple of drivers we saw congratulate Lewis. Kimi came up all the way to park firm to hug him. Max also came up all the way to park firm to congratulate him. They hugged. I love it. I love seeing them interact, even though like obviously they're not like friends. You don't have to be friends with everyone you work with. Do they count as coworkers? Like, but it's nice to see the respect there. And I'm still committed to the idea that a lot of the tension between them was not just because they were competing for the title against each other, but also because there was such bad blood between Christian and Toto. I feel like that really played into their perceptions of each other, and I feel like they might have had a much more respectful relationship had their teams been on that same level. George came to congratulate Lewis. Obviously, didn't have to go far. He was in the pit. He was in Park Farm. Lando congratulated him, but the way he did it literally just took me out. So Lewis like walked over to where you weigh yourself, and he like before he approached the scale, he like crouched down on the ground and knelt down and like lowered his head for a moment to like take it all in. He's probably like tearing up inside his helmet. And to be fair, he maybe should have picked like an area that was more to the side, like not in a high traffic area, but that's where he kneeled down. And then like so the camera is like at his level, like kneeled at the ground. And then in the camera lens, you just see a partial neon green helmet, and you see some of Lando's legs, and the camera zooms out a little, and you realize that Lando is weighing himself, hovering above Lewis, like taking the moment in. And I guess like Lewis probably like sensed a shadow over him or something, because he like looked up, and then Lando was like laughing and they hugged. But it was just so funny to like Lando maybe should have just given him a moment, like stood to the side and waited for Lewis to finish his little like moment to himself before like hovering above him. It was so funny. Um Also, I was thinking about this yesterday, after the Knicks won, but F1 drivers are, as athletes go, low key lucky that they have a helmet that they can keep on if they don't want the whole world seeing their immediate reactions or feelings, like whether they're crying happy or sad tears or like fuming. Like, no one has to see that because they can just keep the helmet on, which they regularly do. Um, but like watching Wemby from the Spurs have to walk around after losing in all of his like helmetless, over 7 feet tall like glory was so tragically funny. I couldn't handle it. Like the nosebleeds were up close and personal with his like sad face. So unfortunate for him. And I hope the F1 drivers know how lucky they are that they can hide their emotions from the world. Also, I can't believe that Nico was doing all of the interviews. Um, just Lewis's luck, but Nico Rosberg like asked all the questions needed to be asked. He pointed out, as the commentators wouldn't stop pointing out, that this is the first British podium since 1968. Also, I think this is the oldest driver since the 70s. Um, Lewis was respectful. There was a moment earlier in the day where Nico looked like he was trying to get a quick question in for Lewis, and Lewis just like breezed by him. But I think it was an accident, because I think later he was like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you," but he was like rushing to the anthem. Um, he asked all the questions, all the drivers, and he like returned back to Lewis and was like, "So what makes you so confident these days?" Nico was definitely like digging for the tea, and he got it. We'll talk about it in a sec, but like made me lol. Also a quick side note. Also, you know what else about the podium is, I think it was kind of nice that it was Mercedes, McLaren, and obviously Ferrari, because those are all of the teams that Lewis has driven for. So it was kind of like all British, all of his teams. Like it was a very full circle. This moment was for him, was like a great Lewis Hamilton. Like everything sort of pieced together, and I kind of loved it. Also, a quick side note: I cannot believe Lewis's hair was not tied up. And like, to be fair, like as I was thinking this, I was like, I guess I don't remember what F1 Academy drivers do with their hair. Like maybe the tying it up in a bun or a ponytail poses some sort of like health risk, or maybe it's just like uncomfortable to put a bun in a helmet. But I feel like it's so uncomfortable to have like all your hair like matted to your neck because it's so sweaty in there. But that's like all I could think. But like that's another thing this weekend is Lewis rocked up without his braids, so it was his natural curly hair, and I loved it. It was such a look. He seemed so free. I love that. I love the hair on him. But like from I was just imagining my hair stuck to the nape of my neck, and it felt uncomfortable. But maybe there's like no other option. Um, the Nico interview that I love the most is when he asked like the confidence, and he gave a bunch of standard answers like everything's coming together with the team, like I have a new racing engineer, they're like listening and respecting the things that I'm asking for, like I just feel the car is good, blah blah blah. And he goes, and also like I guess I'm just like really happy in life. Ah, Kim. Loved it. Anyway, um, also Lando in a separate interview in the media pen was asked what it was like, how cool the podium was, and he was like, "Oh, this is a really cool podium because it's like the first British one since the '60s, and also it was cool to be up there with Lewis and George. Well, mostly just Lewis. It was cool to be up there with Lewis." Like, wait, that was why is everyone on George's shit? Like, leave the poor kid alone. By the way, the cool down room sucked. There was some weird audio that they kept like kept like you couldn't hear what the drivers were saying. I heard like 4 words total, and it was cut really short, and I don't understand what happened. All right, results. Driver of the day obviously was Lewis Hamilton. Obviously he did exceptional, and I have no notes. From lights out to the checkered flag, he was 10 out of 10. The commentators kept referring to it as vintage Lewis, and I feel like, yes, that's what we got today, and I loved it. Also, my own personal opinion, I don't want to give Kim Kardashian, like, I don't want to take away the credit from Lewis and the work he's done and the work Ferrari's done to meet him where he's at and give him what he needs and blah, 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 and his skill, like, all of that stands true. However, I don't think it's a coincidence that since Lewis and Kim started dating, his performance has improved. The more public they become, the better his performance is getting. She is like the Etsy witch. Someone ordered an Etsy witch for Lewis, and Kim Kardashian showed up. The "I'm happy in my life" comment that he gave with his little cheeky little grin, dying, dead, deceased. Like, I can't. Nico was definitely fishing for that answer. He got it. Like, I loved it. Also, I kept refreshing Kim's page to see if she posted. She finally did. She posted a story of the team cheering him on as he crossed the finish line, which I kind of love. Very wholesome. She used a little red heart and the trophy. It was a very subtle nod. But what I loved, and she liked Lewis's post about it. But what I loved even more was that Chloe posted to her story of her watching the race. Chloe got up at 6 a.m. to watch the race. I love that so much. I feel like it almost speaks more to the relationship they have when her siblings are waking up at the crack of dawn to watch him perform. Love it. And also, speaking of driver of the day, I think that Kimi deserves an honorable mention because he really did do an exceptional drive today, bar his car just stopping in the middle of the track. Dick in the box. I'm going to say Mercedes, but not because of necessarily specifically today. I think overall their treatment of George, it's getting a little sus. Like, I'm getting a little, it's giving how Williams treated Logan Sargent. Yeah. So the way they treated Logan, and I didn't think Logan deserved it, even though his performance was not great, but I certainly don't think George deserves it. Like, and if this feeling was reignited in me today because Mercedes posted a video of Toto watching the podium from the garage, and he's saying that the race made him feel a bit raw overall. He's saying that he's upset about the DNF, but he thinks that they maximized what they could today. They maximized performance that day. And then he starts tearing up, saying he's really happy for Lewis and he deserves it because every driver wants to win Ferrari. Lewis has earned this, blah, 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 all that stuff. Not a single mention of George Russell. Beyond that, why the fuck was he in the garage? Why isn't he out there at the podium ceremony? Like, to me, that's insane and so rude. Like, George is annoying at the best of times. I have my issues with George Russell. However, George has been ride or die for Mercedes since before he like the moment he popped out of the womb. He was like, "Whoa, Mercedes till I die." That whole thing with the PowerPoint he made for Toto Wolff about why he should be on the team. His whole thing at Williams as he waited his time, finally got to Mercedes only for the car to suck, and for him to constantly be in the shadow of Lewis Hamilton. Lewis leaves, the car is on the up and up, and there's Kimi Antonelli, a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed little Italian tween who like is impossible to not love. He just has like big eyes, a cheeky smile, and a dream, and he's making it happen. And George is just on the side. Like, you can't hate Kimi. George wants to hate Kimi. His whole team's like, just like, who's George Russell? We only see Kimi. Like, he's being brushed to the side again after waiting and baiting his time and being a leader in this team and like performing well. And like, how well can someone perform when it feels like no one believes in him? Because that's what it feels like Mercedes is giving, like just lack of belief in George. And I don't think he's deserved that at all. And I think it's deeply unfair. And I think as amazing and lovely as Kimi is, George deserves a bit more attention, love, and respect from his team. And it pisses me off. So that's how I feel about Mercedes and why they're my dick in the box. Moving on to Barcelona results. Lewis, George, Lando, Max, Oscar, Isaac, Pierre, Franco, Liam Lawson, Lindblad, Gabby, Carlos Sainz, Ocon, Perez, Charles Leclerc, Kimi, Ollie Bierman, Alex Albon, Fernando Alonso, Nico Hulkenberg, Bottas, and Stroll. And the standings are as follows. Kimi with 156 points, Lewis with 115 points, George with 106 points, Charles with 75 points, Lando with 73 points, Oscar with 68 points, Max with 55 points, Gasly with 41 points, Isaac with 34 points, and Liam Lawson rounding up the top 10 with 28 points. It's getting a little close with the top 3. However, Kimi still has a solid lead. And he did lose his streak of wins with this race, but I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. I don't think this is a indication of a dip in performance. I don't think his performance is going anywhere. So the standings for the teams are as follows: Mercedes with 262 points, Ferrari with 190, McLaren with 141, Red Bull Racing with 89, Alpine with 57, Racing Bulls with 41, Haas with 21, Williams with 11, Audi with 2, Aston Martin with 1, and Cadillac with 0. Rough. All right, that's it for the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix. We've got Austria coming up in a couple of weeks, and I cannot wait. I think that track is going to give us some very interesting results. And I can't wait to watch it with all of you guys. Until then, box.